And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you loved it so much that you came back for more. And you know what? We have a lot more for you. Very, very interesting story today with a fantastic guy, powerful dude. Cannot wait to introduce you to him. This is the podcast, folks, that is about podcasters. It's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. Our guest today is a podcaster on top of everything else. So I think that you cracked that code long before we got there. This is the place where we come together to support each other. And this is the place where the rising tide really does raise all ships. I really appreciate you folks being here today. Love everything you've been doing to help us grow. We are on our way to 100 episodes very fast, and that's it's pretty good for a newer podcast. And just love what you're doing. So thank you for the support. We're going to keep bringing you these awesome people like we have today. And well, let's get started. This gentleman with me today is a certified mindful hiking guide, a wilderness first responder, and the host of the podcast Project Mindfully Outdoors. Please welcome Mike Martin. Mike, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, brother. Thank you for having me.
Love it, man. Love it. I appreciate you being on today. I know you're busy, outside. Thank goodness it's raining. We got a little break so that you could come in indoors over there where you are. But listen, man, I'm fascinated with your story, with the things you've been through, and I know you have a whole lot to share. Let me just say this: tell our audience who is Mike Martin. What are you about, man, and what brings you here today?
So, Mike Martin is somebody that has been through numerous transformations in life and really lives by a quote from Marcus Aurelius, which is adversity is an opportunity to showcase who you are inside. And the reason that that quote actually became so powerful to me is I discovered it the morning after I tried to take my life. So that was actually the transition within my life because I lived my life basically hiding from depression and anxiety. I wore a mask, never wanted to deal with it, and made numerous bad decisions in life, put myself in the wrong place. Finally, I was facing my second divorce where those words were spoken to my face that I had nothing to offer anybody. I always looked for validation outside, externally from whatever people would give me. That was what led me into the woods that night to attempt to take my life. When I woke up, like I mentioned, I stumbled back to my truck and turned on a hunting podcast and had that thrown at me. So it made me think about as a father, if I would have died that night, then my kids would have remembered that I had nothing to offer anybody. If I could go from being homeless and broken to get back on my feet and as life took it, start working to help other people, my kids would learn something that no story I could tell them would impact their life, just how important adversity is. And from there, I started getting myself together and get into talk therapy. And one of the very first sessions, we talked about meditation. And I argued with her for that whole 60 minutes. I was like, dude, no way. I'm not shaving my head, not going to go, not doing none of that crazy stuff. And where I was living at that point, I went out back and I took out my crossbow, took my nightly archery practice, and realized I'm controlling my thoughts, focusing on my breathing, doing all these things I argued with. So, okay, you win. I'm going to dive down this rabbit hole. But I didn't feel comfortable doing it at home. So I had to go outside and get on a trail, sit down, and go through the process and actually start connecting with nature. And that was during the summer that year. And I was getting ready for hunting season. I wanted to get a sponsorship. I wanted to be one of those people. And I got the sponsorship. The requirement was to be on social media. Everybody does the how to's and check out this hunt. I had just gone through something massive, right? Where had I had somebody sitting there with me to talk to that night, I probably wouldn't have gone the path that I went. And not to mention really thinking about mental health in the outdoor community, that is the darkest area to go because there's so much fear around it. When you're in a position that you're dealing with mental health, you go to the things that you really truly enjoy. Well, in our world, weapons are a key tool of the trade. You say you're depressed or you're suicidal or anything like that, they want to come take those things.
Right.
You shut up, you're scared. And I wanted to be the voice to kind of start sitting with people and helping them. So, in a way, helping myself. And I started doing articles, doing little social media things around that. And ultimately, that led me into podcasting, which then had another backdoor for my journey because one of the things that came out of that whole situation was I was like petrified of people. I couldn't interact with anybody. I would sit in a little tent or whatever the case may be, locked away. So I knew I had to change that. And it gave me a forum to work on dealing with social anxiety and that phobia by first learning to put my voice out there and then starting the campfire sessions where I would have conversations like this and being able to just work my way through it. And somehow along the way, all that started to resonate with people. They started tuning in. And I'll tell you, when they started tuning in, that was scary. That was really, that was mind blowing and fearful because all of a sudden now I'm this guy that sitting out in the woods, meditating and encouraging other people. And just as I figured things out in real time. And then I learned how to embrace it. And I started developing, that authentic way, that authentic vocabulary. And that's led me to where I'm at now.
Wow. Okay. I mean, that's something, man. When you start the whole thing off talking about, surviving a suicide attempt, that's some heavy stuff, brother. Um, I think the worst part about all that is that the people hear it so often that I think they're almost numb to it. But when it's somebody who has been there, like I have, who has actually been sitting there making those decisions that you made that night and walking away from it, it hits a whole lot different. So I just want you to know that I hear that story. I hear you, even if other folks don't, because I have actually been sitting in those shoes, and I know how dark that place is, man. I'm not sure if people haven't been there, if they're ever going to really, really understand how dark that room is that you're in. For you to get out of it like that, um, wow, man, power to you,
Thank you.
power to you.
It's really well said, encapsulated, because you do feel like you're on an island. And, in that environment, and yes, it was during COVID, so where everybody was hating the fact nobody could talk to anybody or interact. I was actually loving that fact because it allowed me to slide deeper into that shell of isolation. And then I had to work my way out as we came through. But in that area, I feel like it gave me the opportunity to do a lot of internal work that I feel I probably would have skipped over. And to me, that was one of the beautiful things that came out of it because, we talk about in that stage of life where it was either you found a way to use that time as a live time or it was just dead time and you sat there. I truly benefited from it. And then as I worked my way through, I realized, I'm not the only one that ever gets to that space. So that becoming the fundamental aspect of it was such an important part for me. And I struggled a lot with learning how to build that voice because I kind of, latch onto stories from throughout history of important historical characters I looked up to. And I'd utilize those. And then as I kept going down that rabbit hole and thinking about it and actually putting myself in my own shoes, I realized how relatable that is. And now I'm at a stage where I host indoor meditation classes and I take people out on the trail and hike with them and teach them about like walking meditation, work survival skills into it and find the facts within all the different things that you're telling yourself and how to find how to work your way out of it. And it's such an amazing experience to connect with somebody and see that change, even if it's within the classroom, which is like 60 minutes. The effect that they walk out of there and that they feel. It's one of those things that, yes, for me, this is a job, but more importantly, it's that human connection.
Wow, man. I mean, you talk about the human connection and how podcasting kind of helped you do that. Let me also ask, were you always connected to the outdoors the way that you are now, or did that also kind of come from and was bolstered by that incident?
Well, as a kid, I remember growing up chasing my grandfather around on his outdoor adventures. So I had that early start with it, but at an early stage in my life, he had a massive stroke. So he was bedridden for the remainder of his days. And I drifted away from it. Toward the end of his life, I found myself going back out, starting to pick up a fishing rod and go fishing and do the little things that we used to do together, almost chasing those memories, chasing that connection with them. And then it kind of spiraled from there to where now it was more than just I want to go out and, spend that time mentally and emotionally in that space. I want to go out and actually grow. I want to learn about myself based on what I see and what I experience. And that led me into another avenue with my grandfather that we connected over was watching old westerns and different Native American movies and things like that. He piqued my interest a little bit, it connected meditation, the spirituality, and it all leads back to the Native American stuff. So I started reaching out into the communities and I started meeting different medicine people and different fire keepers and things like that, learning from them, and kind of morphed it into my own little way of not only honoring the wisdom that was shared with me, but making it practical where someone like you and I can sit down and connect over it, to share the stories and open the forum to start to guide somebody along the journey.
Interesting, interesting. Now that's something that you offer now. It sounds like through your because one of your offers is a free 30-minute meditation session. Is that what I'm picking up here? That's what you're talking about?
That's exactly how that developed. And with that whole premise of that, that first call being free, it's not a sales pitch. It's legitimately there because I've been in those shoes. I know the effects, and I also know that you can get out of it. And to open your heart authentically and willing to extend a hand and say, hey, you're struggling right now. I'm here. I can help you.
Nice,
That's just the simple, most basic.
nice, nice. The after your divorces and after the incident and everything else, it seems like your interaction with the wilderness, just from some of the things that I've read, on you here, really sort of gave you that peace, gave you that solace to kind of go out there and maybe get back in touch with yourself.
It did. It was actually, sitting out in the woods, overcoming anxiety is a great example of it. It's a story that I love to share because, I was sitting out in the woods on November 15th, which is the height of the deer rut. And I hadn't seen nothing all day. And then finally this young, amazing looking buck come through. And I like to have a connection with the deer that I harvest. So therefore I didn't take him. And I'm standing there looking at him, thinking to myself, I call myself a hunter, but I'm not shooting this deer. What am I doing? And then I thought about it for a few minutes, and that anxiety that had really been sitting in my heart over the past couple of weeks leading up to it came out. So I started projecting that onto this deer. And the more I thought about it, here we are, November 15th, the height of the rut, and he has a job to do. He has to reproduce. Now, when you think about a deer's place in the world, they are on the menu for everything. So therefore, they live in anxiety and they live in a world of fear. However, and they like to hide because of it. But here on this day, he's out in the open making these mistakes to do his work, to do his job. Because in the back of his head, he knows that he's got the skills to at least try to ward off any perceived danger. And now an anxiety attack in reality isn't life and death. It feels like it. However, to think about that deer in that field that day is a constant reminder that you can step aside from the fear-based racing thoughts and find your way back to the point where you realize you have the skills and the ability to overcome whatever the obstacle is that has triggered you.
Interesting. Yeah, so the anxiety part of it is something that you've been dealing with for a while. Is that something that started when you were younger? I mean, can you trace that back to something triggering that for you?
That's something that's always been there. And like I said, with that divorce and the way that went down, that was, I feel like the catalyst that just made it amplify. And when it gets to the point where you turn that volume up to 11, you got to figure out how to turn it back down. And that was really the whole mission with getting into therapy, and then a couple of months later, actually getting on the trail and taking, almost a sabbatical, a long hike to just get away and reflect and utilize those new tools that I had picked up, like the meditation, the mindfulness, and seeing how I could figure myself out. And that's really been the whole project, the whole catalyst for the project.
That's amazing. So you have all these hardships in your life, you reach a low point, and then your therapy that you're going through, your love for the outdoors, and your time out there, and then podcasting itself are all your additional therapies to kind of help get you where you are today and build the business that you have.
That's exactly how it's been. It's been step by step, and one of those things that I never anticipated happening. Like I didn't set up and wake up one day and say, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna go be this guy. It just happened to be what I believe my purpose in life is. And the way that I came about making that assumption is one of the very first interviews that I did with somebody around a campfire. He was a spiritual healer, spirit guide medium. And early on in the conversation, he says to me that this is my fifth time around. This is my fifth life. And I keep having to come back because I won't figure out this and do this simple thing that's required of me, which is to help people. And, here I am now helping people. So I guess I caught on to that mission or that understanding. But, as you start to piece like the footsteps of the journey together, you start to make correlations. You start to realize how fulfilling it is for you on an emotional level. And then as you continue to just present yourself and essentially just be there, the momentum begins to grow. And now, I went from maybe five people tuning into an episode to I host a local class in my area, and I've got 60 people sitting in there. So, it's crazy to look back at the beginning and go, I had no idea. And even now, I still have really no idea of where this is going or how it's going. It's just what naturally flows out of me. And, the funniest part about that is like getting in a room in front of 70 people. You set up this campfire, this makeshift campfire, and they're all looking at you, and, you've spent your day getting ready for it. And a lot of the time I get asked, do you write the things that you share during the meditation? And the easiest answer to that is no. They all just kind of flow out based off of the energy in the room. I might have a couple of ideas that during meditating in the morning I wrote down as like I'd like to explore this or that. But just like when I started doing my campfires, the interviews, I'd write everything out. Within 2 minutes, I'd throw it on the floor. So I've realized this is kind of like one of those things that just naturally flows out of you. And it's got to be just an open blank canvas from day to day. Although it's got its routines and its rituals and little things that have to be done in order to maintain, it's having that wide open canvas and that willingness to be vulnerable, be authentic, and just present yourself how you are.
I mean, that's that is a recipe for success in podcasting right there. Just those words that you're talking about for your campfire chats, unscripted, authentic, and to a degree, vulnerable. I mean, brother, that's you literally wrote the book right there on how to be successful in your podcasting journey. So I'm not surprised that, you have what 515 audio episodes you told me and an additional 110 more that are video only. That's astounding.
That's something that I really don't count on a day-to-day basis when I'm releasing them. I'm not checking off or, writing down what number it is. I do
Right.
with the podcast just because it's easier to reference, somebody to an episode and be like, hey, look up episode 481. This will cover what it is that we were talking about here, and you'll get a deeper understanding. And the fun part about it is I get to utilize the podcast to help explain the philosophy behind what it is that I do. Because and it's cool because it really helps people to feel like they can touch and engage with meditation, especially in an outdoor setting. Because just like I had my stigmas at the beginning, everybody does. For a lot of us, meditation doesn't feel like it's touchable or something we can do. But when you sit down and around a campfire or you turn on the podcast and I walk you through a little bit of a story that may touch on nature, may touch on some great people that have come throughout history, like Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, even Crazy Horse, and so many others, where you're like, oh, yeah, that's that little nugget that I needed today. That helps me understand where all the stress is coming from and how I can slow it down, how I can get in the moment, even though I've got all this stuff that I got to figure out. Makes it easier to build the house.
I love that. And I definitely want to get more into the podcast. But before that, I got to ask, what do you say to people who are trying to meditate for real? Like, it's not just that they have a stigma or they're not buying into it. Like, you said, hey, I'm not going to sit there and go, or anything like this, right? But, there are people out there. I'm not saying it's me. I'm just saying there are people out there who have attempted to meditate and, we can't find any we just can't find that peace at all. I mean, no matter how hard you try, you feel like you're just trying so hard to not try.
Yeah,
What do you say
I
to
can
people
get
who
that.
who can't get over that part of it? How do you start meditating? You know what I mean? What do you say to somebody like that? Because I may have a personal interest in the answer.
So the very first thing that I say is the fact that meditation is a very unique experience. You see the monks and you see all these different very formal aspects of it that they'll sit there and they do nothing, they don't move. Man, that for most of us, that is so far-fetched. You're gonna move. You're gonna have thoughts. You're gonna experience things. That's perfectly okay. The most important point is to not allow judgment, is
Hmm.
to say, okay, I had to move. I had an itch on my face. I took care of it, and then allow yourself to come back into the moment. Or I had a thought come in that kind of distracted me and took my attention away. That's cool. You just simply say, okay, that thought's there, acknowledged. No, thank you. No, thank you. And you bring yourself back to center.
Hmm.
To me, again, it's all about meeting somebody where they're at. We think about the idea that we sit 60 minutes, sit still and all that. For a lot of us, it ain't happening, so we get discouraged. If you break that down and you start saying, okay, my goal is 5 minutes. If I get there, awesome, I achieved it. If not, that's okay. I'll start over again when I'm ready. And it's just about building a practice, building a routine.
Interesting. I like that advice. All right, hmm. We'll give that a shot. I'll get back to you on that. All right. I like the mindset shift of, not feeling like you're failing every time something comes up. So that's interesting. I never thought about it that way. All right,
And
cool.
real quick though, I want to build on
Yeah,
that because
please.
actually what you're doing is you're teaching yourself a skill that you can take into your daily life. When you go to work and something goes wrong, you want to beat yourself up and say you failed. Instead, you look at it just from a neutral point of view without that vocabulary built around it. You just say, okay, this has happened. This is the current state of things. That mistake happened. What can I learn from it? How can I evolve?
Nice. Nice. No, I like that too. I can see that. All right. Man, you are just but throwing out the pearls of wisdom today, man. I'm learning stuff. I don't always learn stuff on podcasts. I mean, but that's awesome. All right, so I mean, I can see the journey for sure that kind of gets you here. I've said uh, almost lightly to people over and over that hey, one of the best things about doing a podcast is, that it's therapy. It's a chance to kind of talk through things, and you can speak to people without actually having to like encounter them in person and groups of people and everything else. You used it as a way to combat social anxiety. And so for you, it really was a therapy, like we talked about. Um, the podcast itself, the way you do it now, do you continue to do it because it is therapeutic for you? Or are you doing it because it's part of a business that you're building? What's your purpose in the podcast part of what you do?
Even though this has evolved into a business for me, I've never drifted away from that model of I'm going to do what is appropriate through my eyes. If I'm somebody, if it's something that I would listen to or that I would engage with, then that's cool and that's something that I'll pursue because that's me. So as far as, from day one all the way up to today, I still do that podcast as if I'm writing in my journal, which is exactly where 99% of these episodes have come from. They've come straight out of my own personal journal as I encounter something or an idea intrigues me and I want to go down that hole. Then I'll go back and I'll, of course, kind of craft it, take a little bit of the more personalized things out of it. But every single episode has a page in my journal. And to me, that's where the tool that we have, the platform that we have, becomes so important because you have so many people out there that host a podcast based off of, I just want to get rich quick off of it. They don't last because it's, as glamorous as it may seem to pick up your phone and see this amazing, bright picture of somebody's podcast, whatever, and you turn it on and it sounds great and you're entertained for however long it is. The reality is there is so much grind that goes on behind the scenes that never makes the air that when you even monetized, when you see just those little bumps, if they're not high enough, they're not meeting your expectations, that grind is going to come to a halt real quick.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that's exactly why for me, this has got to be something that is authentically me. That's what drives me, my motivation. And then when you tack on the response from people or the in-person responses, to know that you're truly doing something that benefits and helps, it makes the grind a lot easier. Like a couple weeks ago at one of my classes, this woman showed up because her friend had dragged her there, but that morning she had lost her husband. Her
Mm.
husband had passed away. And I just happened to be doing the meditation based on a tree that had fallen down and been sitting there for years, thinking about transformation in life. And at the end of it, she came up to me in tears and thanked me because helped her, it helped to soothe her grief.
Wow. When you have those types of interactions, for me, I know that really kind of just makes everything all worth it.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So you're doing the podcast. You're also doing these uh, meetings, meditation sessions. How do you refer to these get-togethers?
So I call the in-person classes, I call them the mindful moments
Mindful
meditation
moments.
class.
Okay, awesome. Now you're doing those. How often do you put those on? And they're in person, right?
Oh yeah, they're definitely in person. And I put on at least a couple a month. Just depends on where the venues are and who wants to host a class. Because I reach into the community, like I offer a lot of these classes get offered for free. And, obviously there's stuff behind the scenes that go on, but the most important part to me is getting it out there, making it accessible. So, I'll reach out to a venue a lot of the times, a lot of the local libraries. and just to
Hmm.
help build the following. Because you got to think of it as, sure, these people are coming in for free, but if you can captivate and inspire that one little thing in their heart, they're going to follow it along because they're walking as much as the podcast and all the content walks through my shoes. It's very easy to put yourself there. And before you know it, you've gone from the trailhead where you're suffering from whatever your current ailment is to all of a sudden you're at the peak of the mountain where you've got all this stuff behind you that you've let go and that you've made all these different transitions in your life. And you're doing it in a way that it's adventurous, it's fun, it's comfortable. That's what these meditative classes are about is I put, like I said, I put together the campfire. So I create this whole feel where we're just sitting around a campfire. We don't even realize the work that we're doing behind the scenes. We're just enjoying the moment, picking up these skills, and they start to come in. And then when you tie it with the audio and the video, you get the philosophy behind it. You learn how to apply it even stronger. And then we get together, we get on a trail, we start hiking, we start really building the facts that are going to help you when you're questioning yourself. Because those questions, those thoughts, the intrusive, annoying stuff that we all struggle with, they're really all just hypothesis, really. So if you can go back and say, for example, you've got a feeling that you can't do something. Well, when we're on a trail in person and you've just scaled, I don't know, 500 stairs, like at Turkey Run State Park down in Indiana. And at the top of that, and then you go, man, I did that. I didn't think I could. But then again, going back to the truck at that staircase is just as hard. So I had no choice. Well, puts you in the same moments.
So, and now I got to stop and go back. How do you know about Turkey Run in Indiana? Where are you calling in from, brother?
I'm in Michigan now, but actually I've been down there a couple of times. It's a very beautiful, very amazing area. There's actually a couple of different state parks. And the fun part about going to Indiana, when I mentioned the fact-based thing, is some of the state parks, they've got these challenges. So when you complete the challenge, you get a little sticker or a t-shirt or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. You slap that on the wall and you go, yeah, I remember shuffling up that Boulder Canyon. I can I can deal with the stress of trying to figure out how to pay this bill or take care of that or whatever the struggle may be.
Well, get out of town, man. This is usually something I cover in the pre-interview, but I mean, I'm just going to let all our listeners hear how surprised I am. I mean, we're like neighbors, brother.
Really?
Yeah, I'm in Indiana. That's why when you said that, I was like, wait, what? How does this guy know about that? Yeah, I'm like right on the border of Michigan and Indiana, up north. You can throw a rock out my backyard to Edwardsburg.
Oh, nice. You know,
Hmm.
it's actually funny because that first trip down to Turkey Run
Hmm.
was actually a really great, metaphor for figuring things out on the fly because I had just started this relationship and she was struggling with a lot of self-esteem things and going through that hike, through that 5 mile challenge at Turkey Run was a lot of, yeah, I'm struggling right now, but I'm going to keep going. And then at the end, when you persevere, you look back and you're proud of yourself and you've got that, what I call a grip and grin moment. Just like when you pick up the fish that you just caught and you take the picture and you're all
Hmm.
proud. Well, there's that. And then when we were out there that weekend, it was pretty nasty. It was raining, it was cold, and right at the end of fall. So
Hmm.
we thought it'd be a great idea to take this ice shelter and just use this pop-up ice shanty as a tent. Well, we didn't think to the fact that it was like 7, 8, 10 years old to check it to see if there was any runs, and we ended up getting wet. And we had to figure out how to craft this nifty little tent out of it, and it was a lot of just learning on the fly, just figuring things out, making mistakes, looking to laugh at them and evolve.
Nice. Nice. So, getting back on track here, and out of Indiana, but back on track here. The when I saw that you offered guided expeditions, I mean, I just figured it was, a hike type of thing. Now that I've gotten to know you a little bit, it's definitely something that's much more spiritual than just a hike.
It is. It's a lot more than just simply putting your feet on the ground and going from A to B. We get into the spiritual aspect. We do the walking meditations. We also do a sit down meditation or, as many as time allows. But the other part that is so unique about it, and this is the part that really speaks to where I've been, because I say that at the beginning when I talked about looking for value and worth externally and having that destroyed and taken away from me, I built I rebuilt that one swing of a hatchet at a time. So getting out there, I also teach you some really fun and cool survival type skills, outdoor skills that you get to look back at and add to the catalog of fact-based material.
Hmm. Nice. Nice. All right, let me kind of steer things a little to the podcast, just because we do have a lot of podcasters who listen, and with your number of episodes and everything else you've accomplished, I know people are going to want to hear a couple of things about this. So, you when you first got started with your podcast, I did you go buy all the big expensive equipment, or did you just kind of grab your phone, or how'd you go about doing it?
Actually, the only thing I bought was just a simple microphone off Amazon.
Yep, yep, me too. Okay, so that's simple. Got going with that. Now, as you've progressed, have you upgraded your stuff? Are you big old mixing board now, or are you still using the same old microphone?
Just I don't know how well it's going to come in, but just my cell phone.
Cell phone.
I do everything on my phone unless I'm stuck in the house, and then it's just a simple little webcam and pair of earbuds and my computer.
Keep it simple. Gotta love it. Okay. And then, how do you go about promoting your podcast and all the stuff that you offer? What's and not only how do you promote it, but what have you found is like the best promotions for you?
So that's actually been something that has been an evolving process. Went from I go and create little clips of everything and post it all around social media that nobody cares about, blah blah blah, to then I was like, okay, well, let me start doing these campfires and I'll have other people promoting it too. And, all that stuff eventually starts catching on. But I have found that with my particular style and my mission of my project, the best way is actual in person, touching flesh with people. And like I said, I struggled with doing this thing on social media forever. And then when I finally decided I was going to do these classes and really started putting the energy and the effort into that, that's where the connection grew. Because I'd noticed, there'd be numbers all over the place. And ever since I've been doing the stuff online, the bulk of my numbers come locally, which gets back to, my goal in life before any of this was to be a rock star. So, you think about back in the, I'm going to date myself, but back in the early 90s, late 80s, it was all about you'd drop a little flyer, you'd go to Kinko's, I think it was called, print up
Yep.
100 of them, stick them on all the pizza place windows, telephone poles. And to me, that was like the most simplest thing when I got back to what I actually knew. The doing stuff online and promoting it through social media and everything that works if you know how to do it. If you don't know how to do it, it can be frustrating and you hit a brick wall real quick. So the next logical step is to get back to what you know, and that's where the momentum really started taking off for me.
Nice. Nice. Great answer. Appreciate that. Okay. It's funny the answers I get, vary so much, but very seldom people go, "Oh, I just post on social media and everything works out great."
Exactly.
It's never the answer to that one.
If I post on social media, I spend X millions of dollars on advertisements and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, yeah, but I only got 5 listeners.
Yeah, right. All right. So, speaking of spending millions of dollars, the now you and I talked briefly just about monetizing, and I know you've brought that up a couple of times through the interview here. What has been your experience with monetizing your business, your podcast, your life, so that you can do this?
So again, it's been a lot of ebbs and flows, trying things, seeing if they work, adjusting them if they don't work. I started out doing affiliate marketing.
Mhm.
I hooked up with a brand called My Medic, which does first aid kits and I really fell in love with the backstory about how they got together and how that whole company got started. They've been one of my biggest supporters, and from there I kind of ventured into other brands and working the affiliate thing here and there, but it's been that in-person stuff for me that really has been the candle in the dark room.
Hmm. Okay.
And I don't know if it was somewhere I ever really wanted to go with it, but like I said, it's just been an evolving, free-flowing process that having that ability to connect with people in person, get them on trails, get them to events, get them to do one-on-one sessions and things like that. That is where my bread and butter is. All the other stuff is cool, like the podcast, that's monetized through the company that I work with and stuff like that. But it's where you got to look at where you really feel the most fulfillment. I think is where the real bread and butter comes in, is if you're going to make a long term lasting project. Because like I said, through my experience, there's been so many ups and downs with the monetizing side that a lot of the time I find myself kicking my head against the wall and just ready to give up. And then, something like that happens where it's like, okay, okay. So it gets back to having that real mission inside, that real voice in your heart and utilizing that. You got to capitalize on that part. That's the part that I feel gets overlooked when we talk about monetizing or really any kind of growth in a podcast. We're all focused on the numbers, the matrix of it. We don't think about the lasting burning fire within us. And I know that sometimes that can sound a little mumble jumble-ish or a little hokey, and it's like, yeah, whatever. But really, with the grind of it, because you're not punching a clock, you don't have the typical parameters of a job to hold you in line. It really does take, because of the ebbs and flows of it, tapping into that message, tapping into the real reason why you're doing this. If your reason is I want to make money, it's not here. If your reason is I honestly want to offer something good within my work, then the monetizing part will come to it. It'll find a way to get to you.
Right. As woo woo as that may sound to some people, I could not agree more. I say that all the time to folks. I tell them, hey, don't invest any significant money until you're at least 20 episodes in, for instance, just because at that point you're going to know whether or not you really enjoy doing this. You know,
Exactly.
because so many people get into it and they haven't even dropped an episode yet, and they're asking questions like, "How do I get advertising?" And you're like, "You're on the wrong track already. This is
Exactly.
not the way to go."
And then what happens if you like get yourself in a position where you got that in your pocket, but then you hate your voice or you hate your presentation and you got to start all over. It's like, now what?
Right. Exactly.
Just allow the ebbs and flows, the waves to come to you. Don't look too far down the road. Look at where you're at now.
Yeah, that's great advice, man. I love that. Um, and that's a great answer to the monetization question. So thanks for that. All right. I always ask a corny question, so I better get this one in. What is it about, doing the podcasting portion of your business that you love the most? And what is it about doing the podcasting portion of your business that you just really hate the most?
I think let's see here. The part that I hate the most is the sitting at the computer, answering emails, sending all that out, editing, uploading, downloading, all the monotony of it. But the part that I really love and enjoy is the way that I crafted this whole thing. I crafted this off of something that I love, something that's a part of me. So I do my podcast out in nature. I'll grab my phone and my earbuds, and if I've written some scripts, then I'll take the paper with me. If not, they're on my phone. It's cool. And I just go out and I walk, find a nice spot, and I'll record. And, you know, a lot of the times I get a lot of uh a lot of flack for that. I get a lot of people that don't understand it. Or even with doing my campfires, I do them outside, literally around a campfire. And it seems to be confusing. It seems to be like the most far-fetched notion in the world. The fact that somebody would go outside, sit around a fire, or out on a trail somewhere and record something. And to me, it's just natural. It gets back to the idea that when you're doing this, you're doing it because you love it, and you have to allow yourself to be a part of it.
Wow. Well, I love that. I'm not sure why anybody would be confused about you doing a campfire chat around a campfire. Seems
Well,
to,
it's actually funny because I had somebody get on and, they seen the fire and they're like, "What am I going to do? Sit and stare at this fire for an hour?" I'm like, "Yep, yep, that's what we're going to do."
they really don't understand why they're there, or do they?
It's right in the title, man. It ain't that confusing.
Right, exactly. That's that part is hilarious. So I appreciate you
You
on
got to
that, man.
be open, you got to be honest. I know, like, when it comes down to it, the quality, like the sound quality and all that, it is the most important part of it. But right there holding its hand is authenticity,
Mhm.
is you. You're the one that has put the show together. You're the one that's doing the show. Why not make it where the focus should be?
Yeah, I
And
love
then
that.
most importantly, behind that, why not do it in a way that you're going to enjoy doing it? Because it is a grind at times.
Perfect. Amazing. Love it. Love it. Love it. I love what you're doing. I love where it comes from. Um, I personally am incredibly glad that your story is on the track it's on now and not where it was before, brother. So, once again, for pulling yourself up and out of that, power to you, because yeah, you got some help with some therapy and some things like that, but you had to make the decision to go seek that out. So that is still you doing it. And I applaud the hell out of that, man.
Thank you.
So, all right. In the interest of time, because I could talk to you about these sorts of things probably for the next hour. Um, and now that I know we're neighbors, I probably have to just go get you a cup of coffee and we can talk about this. Maybe I can find your campfire if it's someplace near me. But, as we go, I usually kind of wrap things up talking about, our podcasts and who you are and everything else with just a pretty concise. What's your best piece of advice? Now, you've given a lot. So if you want to double down on something you've already said, no problem. But what's your best piece of advice for people, podcasters, who are not quite where you are?
I'm going to take an interesting take on a quote that I use for a lot of mental health aspects. And I'm stealing this one from Daniel Boone. We're never truly lost. We get turned around in the woods for a few days, but we always find our way where we're supposed to be. And the reason that I chose that is because podcasting is a wide open journey. A lot of the times we get hard on ourselves. We feel like we're doing the wrong thing. But in reality, we're just trying to figure it out. Whether you're following that beaten path that's in front of you, or you get pushed off to the left or right, and all of a sudden there's not a path. Allow yourself to start blazing a trail. Allow yourself to open it up and make the path. Don't be afraid to be yourself. It's something I think that a lot of the podcasts that I come across are lacking, is that willingness to blaze a trail, to be themselves. And that's why a lot of the time I feel like I'm out on an island and I'm in a different area because the way I do things is very unorthodox compared to, the 9 out of 10 cookie cutters out there. And that's what we need more of in this community. We need people that are going to be open, going to be vulnerable, be themselves. And if you're not sure, If you're not sure that you found your voice yet, make that a part of the journey. And the most important part of it, and I've mentioned it many times, is enjoy it. Enjoy the journey. Celebrate your work.
Love it. Absolutely love it, man. That's a fantastic wrap up. Great piece of advice. I'm not at all surprised that you took a little bit of a different tact than the usual person. So, great quote from Daniel Boone, man. Absolutely. You're not actually lost out in the wilderness. Beautiful. um, Mike, dude, you're an amazing guy. You really are. And I know you're used to being on this side of the mic, but you did one heck of a job sitting in that chair today. So, how
Thank
was
you.
it? Relatively painless, I hope.
Yeah, it was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Good deal. All right, Mike, thank you for being with us. Certified mindful hiking guide, wilderness first responder, um, host of the Project Mindfully Outdoors podcast, and also host of guided expeditions and campfire chats all over the Midwest. Mike Martin, thank you for joining us today, brother. It's been an awesome experience having you on my show.
It's been beautiful. Thank you for celebrating my work with me.
Thank you, man. Folks, this has been another awesome episode of the Podcaster Nation. This is the place for podcasters that's about podcasters and it's done by podcasters. And today we got the opportunity to feature yet another incredible podcaster in Mike Martin. Folks, this is the place where we come together. And most importantly, and I hope that no one ever forgets this is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So keep sailing.